This is a scene from a mosaic on the island of Crete from the Minoan-Mycenaean civilization. You know that this myth is one of the oldest we know within Western civilization. It goes from Crete to Greece. And so, this was Theseus, who enters the labyrinth and subdues this monster. I won't go into details because there really isn't time, but it was a monster whose head was that of a bull and whose body was that of a man, a mixture of animal and human being. Greece, later in its mythology, will have many of these kinds of hybrid beings which are half human and half animal. For example, imagine a centaur, which from the waist up is human and from the waist down is a horse. Do you see that it is also a hybrid? But in the case of the centaur, who controls whom? The human dominates the animal, isn't that right? And in the case of the Minotaur, the animal is tyrannizing the human. Here it is important for us to pause the scene and understand an element that Aristotle spoke about, which is very important for us to grasp. And sometimes, even today, we still haven't fully realized this. In a traditional classical myth, my friends, there aren't multiple characters. You find this amusing, don't you? But it's true. The classical myth has only one character, which is you, the human being. All the other characters are your own inner factors projected outward so that you can see them. So if you look at the scene, Theseus, the Minotaur, the Labyrinth, all of this exists within Theseus. There is only Theseus, who represents the human being, entering the labyrinth of his own self, diving deep within, and realizing that he is being tyrannized by his own animal nature, and then decides to turn the tables. Do you see that all of this is happening within him? He dives in. He develops a moment of deep reflection, a search for identity, for inner life. He plunges into the depths of his own labyrinth and realizes that, in truth, he is not living as a human being. He is being tyrannized by his instincts, by his impulses, by his anger, living as an animal. And he decides to turn this situation around. So, what does this myth demonstrate? We will soon talk about what tool he uses for this, how to achieve it. He even left us this recipe, how to accomplish this, and the need for us to verify whether we are truly overcoming the Minotaur in most of our actions. What do you think? Are we living out the scene, or is the Minotaur winning by a landslide? How is our struggle at the center of our own labyrinth going? Do we always defeat the Minotaur? Or only sometimes? These scenes, once again, are hypothetical situations that only happen on another planet. Two clear examples of what never happens to any of us, ain't that right? And in rather innocent cases, right? Laziness, gluttony. There are much worse cases, far worse. Here, we only have lighter cases, right? Clear examples of defeat by the Minotaur. And how could we defeat the Minotaur? What tool did Theseus use for that? Theseus entered the labyrinth, right? The word labyrinth comes from labyrinth. Labyrinth is a very specific kind of axe from the island of Crete. It exists in many places, but Crete is full of drawings of this particular double-edged axe. It is from labyrinth that the word labyrinth comes. A labyrinth is something that can only be overcome by the labyrinth. It can only be mastered by the labyrinth. Labyrinth is a double-edged axe. There is no other way to defeat the Minotaur, okay? Only if you have one of these. What does the labyrinth mean? It means you will have to work simultaneously within yourself and outside yourself, in both worlds at the same time. Otherwise, you will not work in any world at all. Do you understand this? If I want to overcome disorder outside, I must begin by overcoming the disorder within myself. If I want to overcome incoherence outside, I must start by overcoming the incoherence within myself. Because there is a law in the universe that is also reflected in various traditions. You shall not serve two masters at the same time. Either you change yourself, or you will do nothing for the world. Because there is no way for you to create outside what you do not possess within. You project outward what you are inside. Imagine that you are a person who is very scattered, unable to concentrate on studying, with a lot of mental disorder, many mental forms. Is there any chance that you can organize your mind without organizing your closet? What do you think? Does your closet have anything to do with your mind? When you walk past your messy closet, ignore it, give it a little push, and leave it as it is, you are setting a precedent. It's as if you are telling yourself, I accept living with disorder. Disorder will be present in your emotions and your thoughts. It will be everywhere. In other words, either you work in both worlds by the same law, or you will not have that law anywhere. And we tend toward uniformity. Now, notice how curious this is, because everyone, well, not everyone, but a large part of humanity is demanding changes in the world, aren't they? That the rulers change, that the politicians change, that the institutions change, that everything changes. In other words, there are plenty of demands for external changes. And what about internal changes? Have you ever seen anyone holding a sign demanding something like this? Down with the animal self, starting with my own. In other words, it's the first one I will put down, especially because down is exactly where it belongs. Above is the human self. Isn't that right? In other words, I will give an example. I will be the first to put down my animal self. By doing this, I will be able to help build this change outside as well, right? Because otherwise, as a popular saying goes, it's like blaming the mirror for your pimples. You want the world to change on the outside without changing your own face. Change the mirror. It won't do any good. So, the myth of the Minotaur speaks of a process of transforming the world, starting with that world which is entirely under your control, the human world that exists within you. The external world changes when we have human beings, starting with yourself, to set the example, all right? In other words, to defeat the Minotaur is to overcome everything that belongs to our animal self, which tyrannizes us, situation by situation in life. Pause to reflect on when you have conquered the Minotaur and when you have been tyrannized by it. In that moment, you are living or trying to live the myth, applying it to your own life. To be consistent in what you demand from the outside world and what you demand from yourself. Do you understand?